All of us work remotely. We're all on tons of Zoom calls. It's our only really form of communication at this point. So just relax, like take the pressure off yourself, enjoy sitting back and maybe having a coffee and just like hanging out with the people on the other side, because this is our reality. And if you don't love it, then it's going to be hard to keep up with all the Zoom.
Welcome to the Happy Clients Podcast, brought to you by Dot & Company. Whether you're a virtual assistant, an agency owner, or a client-facing account manager, we all deal with clients. Lucky for you, client management is what we do best. Now, let's dig in, chat cam life, and have some fun along the way. Cheers to happy clients.
While we're here on Zoom recording this podcast, we're going to talk to you about how not to get fatigued from all of the Zoom calls we are all on a daily, weekly, monthly basis.
Let me set the stage. It's a Tuesday, Taylor's least favorite day. You have 7 client meetings all back to back, and you're supposed to be on for every single one. Wow. How do you do that? How do you do that?
It's hard.
So hard.
It actually makes me anxious thinking about that.
And pains in my stomach.
And to think, like back when I worked in an office, I would never have 7 meetings in a row, ever.
Never.
Right? So why are we doing that now?
No, I think about that sometimes. Imagine, like, you just sit in a boardroom all day.
Oh, I'd need lunch. I'd need coffee every second meeting. I would need snacks and a fresh air break. Like, what is different now?
So the Zoom culture is very real. It's very relevant as we head into this remote space, and it's, not really going anywhere and definitely not for us. So how do we really combat Zoom fatigue and make every meeting the best it can be? I think we can all agree that setting the tone is really important.
Yeah. And I think when you're setting the tone on a Zoom call right at the beginning, it sets you up for the rest of the call. And if you can just like open up that call and be like bubbly, friendly, energetic, setting that tone right from the beginning is going to be really important. And Katie, I think you're really good at this. So how do you set the tone?
Yeah. So I actually like my opener is like, used to be the weather, that like small talk, like, oh, what's it like in Arkansas? It's COVID, unfortunately. But I think moreover, the point is having these like common trends that really just put the person that you're speaking to or the meeting at ease and relaxed. Like, you don't want to be stiff. You want to be efficient, and your tone should just be more friendly and really welcoming. So having these sort of one-liners, these kind of generic small talks, it really work. But another tip and tool is like, bring yourself into it. I have an agency I work with in the UK. My sister's over in the UK. So I'm all the time being like, oh yeah, my sister went there. My sister talks about that all the time. I think that's actually a really great tool because it makes you just more personable, more real, very authentic, and sets that tone as like, this is going to be a meeting, but we're also all humans, and it'll be fun.
Yeah. And like setting the tone for yourself too. If you're feeling a little bit tired or anxious about the 7 Zoom calls that you're going to have, like, just really like use this as an opportunity to pump yourself up. Like just go into this, be like, listen, take a breath. I'm going to go into this meeting. I'm not going to be anxious. I'm going to be here for the client and I want to do a good job. So exit all your browsers, make sure you're focused, setting that like, I'm here to do a good job. And I want to make you feel good about the things that are happening in the agency, and just being super open. And
you know what, Taylor, I'm actually glad you said that because it's a huge pet peeve of mine. Like, if you're on video, know when somebody's not paying attention to you.
100%. You can see the glare from the screen that they just popped up.
Or they're like over here somewhere.
Yeah.
And you're like,
yeah,
over here. So I think even more to like setting the tone, like, engage them, make sure that they don't wander, their attention is there. And this isn't going to be 50 minutes of talking about the weather, but it is an icebreaker.
That leads into our next point, which is being efficient on your meetings. So obviously, if you've been listening to this podcast or work with us over here at Dot, we're big on efficiency. So things like being prepared for your call. I'm also not a fan of when people are distracted. So turn off your notifications. Don't have things popping up during a meeting. And making sure that you're using that time. It's not just your time, it's someone else's time. Use it efficiently. Don't dance around for 45 minutes when it could have been a 15-minute call. Build a relationship, but be efficient.
I've actually learned to do is get the agenda out beforehand. So if your client has something to add to it, you can like discuss that and have it ready. So you're not like, I'm actually the worst at this. You know, when somebody asks you about maybe a metric or something, you're going into Business Manager to find it, but you're on the call and it's stressy. Like if there's any information you can have beforehand that client might want, just to like cut back on those stressy moments where it's like, I don't know, kind of panic or like you're screen sharing and and unprepared. Exactly. So I do like to send the agenda out to the clients one day before is totally fine. And just like, do you have anything to add so we can really use this time wisely?
Yeah. And then if they add things like during the call, we can be like, oh, I need to look into that because it wasn't on the agenda.
Exactly.
Another thing too, if you have 7 Zoom calls, for example, that's just an exercise of overbooking and we all do it. I was away last week for an entire week, so I couldn't have any calls. So in my head, I'll just work super hard the week I get back. And the week you get back, you're like, oh my gosh, I have 8 calls a day. Like, I don't know why I did this to myself. I overbooked. I shouldn't do that. So really knowing what your limits are and keeping that top of mind.
And Taylor, also to the point of that back-to-back overbooking, you can fully book in time that is like prep or follow-up and get those in the calendar so people can't book you back-to-back. And actually, I think you're pretty good at doing that for me, especially for meeting in person. You're like travel because I don't always think to do it.
You don't do it. You're like,
I know. And then you're booked back-to-back and it makes no sense. And then even more to that, we use Calendly for our scheduling links, and you can actually go in there and people cannot book for like 15, 30, 45 minutes after. So that's a great sort of setting to have as well. So if you're like me and a delinquent, you can just have Calendly do it for you. But yeah, just having those buckets of time too, because they're just as important. You can't have 7 meetings and then follow up with all 7 after.
No, like you have to eat lunch and you have to have a life. It's just exhausting. And I get super anxious before a huge day of meetings. Like the night before, I'm like, oh, I'm not going to have any time tomorrow.
And then you're distracted. And to our earlier points of setting the tone or being efficient, you have to really be zoned in on the meeting, on the client, and make sure that you're giving them all of you. And you're not like, oh my gosh, I have 4 million things to do.
Our last point, relax. And it's, you know, easier to say than it is to do it, but we're all in the same boat. All of us work remotely. We're all on tons of Zoom calls. It's our only really form of communication at this point. So just relax, like take the pressure off yourself, enjoy sitting back and maybe having a coffee and just like hanging out with the people on the other side, because this is our reality. And if you don't love it, then it's going to be hard to keep up with all the Zoom.
And don't expect perfection. You know, if somebody creeps in the background because they have to use the washroom or something, that's totally fine. And if cameras cut out, that's fine too. If there's technical difficulties, like those things don't need to stress you out. It just adds another layer of stress to your phone call. You don't need that. You definitely need to relax and just lean in. It is technology. It is working remote. That's definitely very much part of our lives.
Yeah. So we hope that this episode helps you realize that we're all in the same game. We all get stressed out when we have a lot of Zoom calls, and you just have to put yourself first and make sure that you're setting your boundaries. Just say that you have a meeting when you have time block to prep. You deserve that time. And
there's also nothing wrong with having that time block to prep. That's actually doing your job really well. Nobody's going to really fault you for that. So that efficiency and that awareness is so important. And don't forget to relax and don't overbook.
Yes. Speaking of which, Katie and I have to get to another Zoom call. Thank you guys for listening into another episode of the Happy Clients podcast. If you are new here, make sure to jump over to dotandcompany.co and learn about everything we're up to over there, everything about client management and the agency life. So thanks again, and we'll see you on the next episode.
Cheers to happy clients.